some of my reflections about you or impressions about you. On your podcast, you come across as so kind and humble and open and curious. And at first I thought, well, maybe that's a Canadian trait. And to some extent, I think it is. Or at least that's a stereotype that we have about Canada down here. But then the other day it hit me, you're Mr. Rogers. I'd recently seen the film with Tom Hanks, and you bring that quality to both to your writing, but to the podcast is where I really experienced that. One example for me of your humility is your interview with the two young Mormon missionaries on the streets of Toronto. And geez, I've been approached by Mormon missionaries. We've got one of their arcs is 2 blocks away from here, but it's like, I just brush it off. I'm not interested in it. But you were so open and curious, and so I was so struck by that, as were other people who called into your show to let you know that. How would you describe yourself as an interviewer? Do you have a style that you're
Mm,
aware of?
um, well, there's a few principles that I have. One is absolutely zero judgment, right? So I
Yeah.
interviewed a sex worker, for example. She's the author. I went to Omaha, Nebraska to interview her. She's the author of the world's first children's book, which depicts a sex working parent.
I listened to that one. Yeah.
And even though the majority of the world believes that sex work should be illegal and criminalized, and they see nothing wrong with sex workers, for example, losing their children, which happens a lot. Like they have their children taken away because the judge rules that it's unsafe for them to be in that environment. Um, I didn't know what I thought until I interviewed her and I asked her about those things. So
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna prejudge her. I was just gonna be like, so why did you put a sex working parent in a children's book? What is she told me stories that have completely, opened my mind. Like, did you know that because it's criminalized, if there's sexual abuse, if there's physical abuse, if there's harassment, there's no recourse where a sex worker can call the police, can get safety, can get support. You're almost operating outside of the legal channels, and that's not safe. In fact, if you call the police, then you might get more abused.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. So non-judgment is a big factor for me, because also, who am I to judge? Like, we all live different lives. We're all beautiful people. I believe that there's one energy source. I don't know what it is, but I believe that trees, the planet, the earth, the molecules in you, Dave, the molecules in me, they all came from the same place. They're all from
Mhm.
stars. They're all from, Neil deGrasse Tyson will go on the record and say, you are stars. You physically are stars,
Yeah.
right? So I took a lot of heat after that Mormon interview because, well, not heat, but some people said, what a kind, empathetic, curious interview. And other people said, how dare you give a platform for this bizarre religious fact? So, you see, that's okay. I like having that
Mhm.
provocativeness, because to me,
Yeah.
that's a sign that I'm exploring territory that's not there. The other principle I have is three-dimensional. And so I believe that the news media is two-dimensional. I believe that most films or television are two-dimensional, meaning that a character is given like a trait, and they are one way. And for the duration of that film or that TV show, they demonstrate that trait. Um, but you and I both know nobody's like that. We are
Yeah.
all a terrible mixed stew of knots and twists and turns, and it depends whether or not you had breakfast, or if you had a fight with your partner, or if there was traffic on the way to work, or what the weather is, or how much you slept with. You're 10 different people in an hour. We all are. We have
Mhm.
moods. We
Yeah.
have we have the tides change, the moons change, our relationships change, our friends change. You get a nasty text, you get a positive text. So I want the show to be three-dimensional. That's partly why I record all my shows in person. I just want you to hear, even though Malcolm Gladwell's living room doesn't sound like anything, I want you to feel like you're in Malcolm Gladwell's living room. Or
Yeah.
Judy Blume. I did
Yeah.
her interview in her bookstore. Judy Blume's 82 years old. And do you know she works as a bookseller in her own bookstore in Key West, Florida? So I was already going to be in Miami for a speech. So I flew down to Key West. She was kind enough to give me half an hour of her time. And she said to me the same thing everyone says. Are you sure you want to record it here? You can hear the cash register beeping. You can hear somebody walking by. I said,
Right.
that's exactly what I want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want, you know, when you listen to a baseball game and you can hear like the crowd or the
Uh-huh.
bat or the announcer, I want that ambiance because I want the show to be three-dimensional. I
Okay.
think that we have two-dimensionalized ourselves. Everybody these days is a brand. You go on LinkedIn, you're a brand. You're a fixer. You're a supply chain expert. You're an HR guru. Come on, guys. No one's two-dimensional.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
one. Let's try to embrace our whole humanity here.
You're here.
You're here.
What's the third thing?
The third principle.
The third principle, yeah,
I
of
mean,
your
I guess
style.
you mentioned it already, but it's just deep, deep, deep curiosity and not being afraid to ask the stupid question. And so, you know, I was super nervous in chapter 3 of 3 books to interview Seth Godin. I flew to Hastings on Hudson, which, by the way, does not have a hotel. It's that small. So I had to stay in a hotel in Yonkers, which is an hour north of New York City. And then I go in an Uber to Hastings on Hudson. The Uber driver can't even find the place. So now in Seth Godin's studio. Seth Godin is the author of 18 best-selling books on marketing, Linchpin, Purple Cow Tribes. And so I'm like super nervous. He's a lot older than me. He's a lot wiser than me. He's a lot more successful than me. I go into his studio. We close the door. I hit record and I say, wow, this is a nice office or studio. And he's like, yeah, it's got a good patina. This is like 5 seconds into the podcast. And I had a thought in my brain. And the thought in my brain was, what's a patina? I don't know what a patina is.
Yeah, you're
So I thought
very
I could either
open.
ask him or not. And I said,
Yeah.
what's a patina? And he explained it
Yeah.
as someone always does when they're asked a question
Yeah.
nicely. And then we talked about that. And I only mentioned that example, Dave, because so many people wrote me an email saying, wow, I love that you asked them because I didn't know what a patina was either, but
Yeah.
I'd be too scared to ask.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like having the intellectual confidence to know that it's okay and in fact good to ask the dumb questions.